You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, released in late January 2022. Today we look at the new Who adventures, and who better to talk to than our good friend David J. Howe, and he talks about his new book. In Collection Protection, we'll talk to you how to protect that same book and other books from Telos Publications. And an outrageous offer that may or may not be outrageous. Stay tuned to the full main story to why these prices are so high. That and more. And now, here is Fraser Hines.
They all say who is Doctor Who? Where is he from? What does he do? They wonder who is Doctor Who? So I ask you, who's Doctor Who?
Welcome back to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, the podcast that explores the international world of Doctor Who collecting, those who collect, issues surrounding Doctor Who collecting, and of course, all kinds of Doctor Who merchandise. I am Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I have been collecting Doctor Who items for 40 years. I was lucky enough to open up one of the first Doctor Who stores in Chicago that exclusively served the Doctor Who fans, and it was back in 1984, and we called it Bundles from Britain. And long after I left that in the past, it was brought forward to me in the future, as Doctor Who often does, and it's mentioned in a wonderful book called Red, White, and Who, The Story of Doctor Who in America. And Bundles from Britain lives on page 384. Every collector needs to have a copy of this book, and I have a convenient link on the front page of our website at drwhocollectors.com. And it links to the Amazon page where that can be purchased. I'm excited, very excited, that I'm a part of the Direction Point Doctor Who Podcast Network. You can find some wonderful podcasts, all Doctor Who related, at directionpoint.org. If you happen to be a Doctor Who podcaster, join the network today and join the ranks of great podcasts such as Time Streams, Police Box in a Junkyard, the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, and Traveling the Vortex. For more information, go to directionpoint.org. And speaking of links, of course, I always mention these two wonderful resources that every collector needs to have shortcuts to on their browser. It includes timelash.com and subselect the TARDIS Library, a great place to look up books and vinyl records, VHS tapes, Betamax tapes, audiobooks, and you can log in for a free account to keep track of your collection for free. Create want lists. And he's fixing the links to find eBay auctions and Amazon links to buy the products that you need. So special thanks to Dan O'Malley for keeping that site free. If you're not sure about what you have, or you need to find an item, or if an item existed at all, then you need to visit Howe's Transcendental Toy Box at drwhotoybox.co.uk. David J. Howe is a great friend of the podcast and a wonderful resource for collectors. Of course, if you're looking for great Doctor Who items at great prices, look no further than DoctorWhoStore.com, owned by Alien Entertainment. They have everything you need and is currently running sales on various items. Of course, if you live in the Chicago suburbs or the Chicago area, you can select a free pickup from their store, or you can visit their storeroom in downtown Lombard. You can also find wonderful Doctor Who related items at Forbidden Planet, one of our sponsors. And you can visit our store on the Doctor Who merchandise links at drwhocollectors.com and select, of course, Forbidden Planet items or our own eBay store. All proceeds on our eBay store benefit the podcast. In addition to all of the podcasts, of course, posted on our website, we're also proud to have the complete guide to Doctor Who classic hardcover books. We list reprints that many collectors weren't even aware of. And we'll be airing more of our 10-part series of classic hardcovers with our Doctor Who novelization expert, Tony Witt, in the coming months. Now that Chicago TARDIS 2021 is behind us, we are counting down, of course, the days to Chicago TARDIS 2022 this Thanksgiving weekend. Keep ChicagoTARDIS.com in your shortcuts and experience the best Doctor Who convention in the Midwest. I am greatly honored to be the official collecting expert for Chicago TARDIS, and I present many panels on Doctor Who collecting and other Doctor Who related topics. If you'd like to see one of my Doctor Who collecting panels that we did from our 2020 Chicago TARDIS, which was all virtual, you can visit the Chicago TARDIS YouTube and Facebook page streams, and I also have that video on our YouTube channel at Doctor Who Collectors Podcast on our playlists. I will have Chicago TARDIS updates as they happen. A special thank you to the sponsors of this podcast, which include Forbidden Planet and Bags Unlimited Incorporated. You can get Forbidden Planet items directly on our website at DoctorWhoCollectors.com, and we get a small proceed from each sale. You pay the same price. Also, you can get wonderful collection protection items at BagsUnlimited.com. They have provided giveaways to some of our panel selections. They are a wonderful place. Collection protection items since 1981. And one more link I want to give you just to make sure you're up to date on the great Doctor Who releases from Telos Publications at telos.co.uk. And yes, they do ship to the United States. Looking ahead on today's show, we are talking to David J. Howe about his new book, The Who Adventures, a book about behind the scenes at Virgin Publishing for the Doctor Who New Adventures. I would like to thank our patrons at this time, too. So if you want to see exclusive video material that you can't see by listening to the podcast, including a video interview today of my interview with David J. Howe, including all the visuals that we share back and forth, go to our Patreon page. And you can find that at patreon.com/Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, all one word. And at least subscribe to the $15 level or above. And you can also see some of our past videos and our special video specials. I also want to thank our patrons, all of which have asked me to be anonymous, and of course the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast for supporting us. You can also support us at Podbean. Go to drwhocollectors.podbean.com, click the Become a Patron button, and support us at any level you feel comfortable. Our theme song is Who's Doctor Who, composed by Barry Mason and Les Reed, performed by Fraser Hines. While Fraser likes the song, it was never a hit, although Barry Mason and Les Reed wrote songs for Tom Jones that did become a hit, including It's Not Unusual. You can hear this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, including now Stitcher Radio, Pandora, Amazon Music, and Podbean, and most recently iHeartRadio. You can find us wherever great podcasts are found. You can also find us at directionpoint.org. We are a Direction Point Network podcast. So after a brief break, we will have some breaking news for you Target book fans, collection protection, our main story, and the most outrageous offer. Stay tuned.
I would like to invite you to take a trip across all of time and space.
Join us in the police box as we discuss the worlds of Doctor Who in a completely random order.
We discuss it all. TV stories, audio adventures, novels, nonfiction books, and on and on. I'm your host, Eric Branson. I would be very happy if you join me for the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast.
The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a proud partner of the Video Junkyard podcast and can be found on most major podcast platforms including SoundCloud, Podcast Addict, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, and Spotify.
You are listening to
The Doctor Who Collectors Podcast.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Witt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, a Direction Point podcast. Keep collecting.
Sad, really, isn't it? People spend all that time
making nice things, and other people come along and break them.
And now it's time for collection protection. We don't want your items damaged or caused any harm due to light or air or water or any of those things. Those are the things that are deadly to collections. So today, well, keeping with the same topic, how do you protect a book like the New Who Adventures or the Target book or books from Telos Publications that are slightly oversized or slightly different sized from most of the other books? So I do have a solution. And so our protection segment is, of course, sponsored by Bags Unlimited Incorporated, bagsunlimited.com for all your collection protection needs. You could also call them at 1-800-767-2247. And if you do call, mention that you heard this on the Doctor Who Collectors podcast. So the size of the New Who Adventures is 8 3/4 by 11.5 with approximately a 1-inch depth. So a bag would have to be slightly oversized, but not too oversized. And so I could see you putting it into like a record bag and taping it over. But we try to find bags that are really close that don't have all that extra material. And we do have a bag. It's called the A4 magazine / photo sleeve with a 1.5 resealable flap. It measures at 8 9/16 by 12 inches with a 1.5 mil polypropylene. You can get 100 of these bags for $17.86, which is roughly $1.79 per bag. And this is it's got it's got some great reviews. So it said here that the product was greater to my expectations, or I've used these bags for some UK items and some oversized books. So definitely something to keep in mind. Also, if you have odd-sized items, measure your item, and go to bagsunlimited.com and start looking through their categories and see if you can find something that'll fit. And chances are likely you'll find something. Anyway, this has been Collection Protection. For more collection protection information, you can reach us at drwhocollectors.com or drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com.
Hello, I am Sadie Miller and I play Sarah Jane Smith for Big Finish. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
And now for the main story. The interest in the new adventure Doctor Who books has been steadily rising in recent years. Many titles now go for about 10 times their original asking price. Now there's a new book that goes behind the scenes and presents a wonderful history of these books and its incredible artwork. I am talking about The Who Adventures, the art and history of Virgins Publishing's Doctor Who fiction by David J. Howe. David J. Howe is also known for having the largest Doctor Who collection in the world, and someone I usually call a guru of Doctor Who collecting, but I also call him a good friend. My guest is David J. Howe. Welcome back to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, David.
Hello, Larry. Hello. It's very good to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, great to have you back. This is, of course, your second appearance on the podcast. The first, of course, was
I survived the first. Yeah.
The first one was in 2019, before the pandemic, when we could sit. When I basically sat next to you without any issues whatsoever, and we had a wonderful conversation. Your wife Samantha was there. We had a pretty good crowd. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it's good.
But before we get into the book, I was doing a bit of research into my own past recently, going through boxes. I'm sure you do this quite a bit in your vast world there, but I found the first place I ever read your name in print. And you were involved with this project. It was the 84 merchandise special.
Oh my word! Yes.
And the very first page of the book of the magazine, Gary Russell says, "Special thanks to David J. Howe, whose assistance and enthusiasm for this project has been invaluable." So that was amazing. The first time. So I wanted to tell you my connection to this magazine because back in I bought this. This is the copy I bought in 1984. In fact, we bought several copies because one of the other features of this magazine, as you may remember, was a complete review of the Chicago Convention in 1984, the TARDIS 21, as it was called back in the day. And in 1984, myself and a group of friends were in a Chicago Doctor Who fan club called the Many Companions of Doctor Who. And we had all decided that we were going to go to this convention as, convention participants and kind of enjoy the fun and all that. Now, to kind of bring it in, one of the other members of this fan club was Gene Smith.
Yeah, all right.
So that's where he and I met years ago. Now, we had another gentleman in the club. He was an older gentleman by our respect. I think he was, at the time, we were in our teen years, but he was in his 50s. But he was a brilliant artist, actor. He was a professional clown, a designer, and said that he was going to design the perfect costume to play. This is long before cosplaying was even a term, but he put together one of the best looking Davros costumes that I had ever seen. And so we helped him get it into the van. We got to the hotel and he basically wore it through the lobby. Well, he caught the attention of one of the photographers because we were so surprised in the magazine that when they did the photo spread for the Chicago convention, and of course I had it bookmarked, and this is live taping, everybody. Go right to that page, and he was the very first picture in the article on the Chicago convention. So here I'm going to show it up to you. That's the Davros in the corner.
Yeah.
That his name was Bill Eubanks, and he was with us. It's the only non-star photograph in that spread. And so I got this copy and I said, we got to get like 10 more of these and get them out to our friends. And it was really exciting that he was part of that. Now, in addition, Bill Eubanks was an incredible artist. He also drew the artwork for the Bundles from Britain catalog.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Same guy who did all of that. And I know that I know Gene personally took care of him until his old age, until his last day. So he'd suffered from Alzheimer's and things like that. But I just thought, well, what a connection. And I thought,
wow.
And of course, I've ever since then, I've seen your name in all various places. And of course, meeting you in 2019, I thought, well, this is great. What a wonderful opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I'll go back. I'm getting right into the latest project here. I do remember back in the 90s when Doctor Who was off the air, and pretty much in our local area, it had completely gone off the air. The local stations just said, nope, we're not going to show it anymore, and there was nothing to be had. And a lot of the comic book shops and science fiction shops started to close and not carry Doctor Who anymore. But I remember going into some mainstream bookstores. In the US, we had like Borders and Barnes and Noble and things like that. And I remember my first instinct was always to go to the science fiction section and see, do they have any Doctor Who? And I remember the new adventure books for the first time being put out. They weren't on any special display. They were just on a shelf like a library kind of thing. And I'm like, this is really cool. I had no idea. So I bought a couple copies and enjoyed that tremendously. It kind of kept me going until, then that and Big Finish came along. And of course, the Doctor Who movie in 96 to kind of get things kind of rolling again. So after that, and now, of course, today, finding those books is very difficult. A lot of those books now are priced well beyond what they came out to be. And in America here, they actually they pulled them off the shelves before they even finished the run. So book titles like Lung Barrow and The Dying Days never even saw the light of day here in America, which is sad. So my first question here is: do you consider this book to be a follow-up to your Target book? As you did that whole research on that, and this is kind of the next step, since those books immediately followed that. Was that a intentional follow-up, or was that a different idea?
Intentional in as much as I had all the information and stuff together. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Both the Target book and the Who Adventures started life as a series of articles in Doctor Who magazine that they were gracious enough to commission me to write. And this, I don't know when, I mean, it must have been 15 years ago now or whatever that I actually wrote these original articles. I lose track of the timescales. I say that because the Target book first came out about 10 years ago. So
just for my listeners, I'm holding up a copy of the Target book.
Yeah, great radio.
Yeah. well, there will be a video. Some my special subscribers will get to see this video.
Okay.
So I kind of entice them.
So both books started life as articles for Doctor Who magazine, and obviously the Target book came out, as I said, about 10 years ago, and we collected all the information in that. Now, with the Who Adventures, yes, I wrote a series of articles for Doctor Who magazine on the New Adventures and on the Missing Adventures range, the Past Doctors range that Virgin did, which I enjoyed doing at the time. And I obviously thought to myself, well, I can use this text at some point in the future. And I always wanted to do a follow-up book to the Target book, looking at the Virgin titles. And the other thing that had happened was that towards the end of the 90s, when Virgin was all winding down and everyone was being laid off, and the Doctor Who ranges were all stopping, and so on and so on, because obviously in 96, when the TV movie came out with Paul McGann, the BBC kind of had a renewed interest in merchandising the show, and thought to themselves, well, we could publish these books and stuff, we don't need someone else to do it for us, so we won't renew Virgin's license, and we'll kind of take it all over. So anyway, towards the end of the 90s, as I say, when Virgin was all winding down, Peter Darvill Evans was kind enough to give me access to his files of all of the new Missing Adventures, all the stuff that Virgin had done. So I went in and spent a couple of days basically going through all the files, seeing what was there, photocopying anything of interest, grabbing as much as I could, kind of thing. And then Peter also, I think it was at that visit, or it might have been slightly after, said to me, I've got this box full of transparencies of all the cover art. Do you want it? Because I'm leaving. Virgin, they're going to chuck it, they're going to bin it. Do you want it? So I was like, oh, yes, please. Thank you. So he very graciously donated me the file of all of the artwork and stuff. And this covered all the Target books and New Adventures and all sorts of stuff, basically, that Virgin had been doing. So I had all this information, but for a long time, because my personal life kind of got thrown into upheaval, as it were, it all ended up in boxes and, like in storage, and I couldn't get at it for ages and ages and ages and ages. And this situation persisted until year before last, until 2020, when in the middle of lockdown and in the middle of trying to sort everything out and sort stuff left, right and centre, I kind of went through the boxes and I refound all of this stuff that I had. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not working at the moment. I've got nothing else to do. I might as well start to scan all of this in and compile it all together, so that we can actually do a book on the New Adventures. And so that's what I did. And so all of that sort of material was scanned in and scanned together and stuff. And it's a similar process to the Target book in a way, in that, the backbone of it is those Virgin articles, but it also needed to be enhanced with biographies and additional information and box outs and lists and all of the other good stuff that goes to make a book, as well as, of course, all the visual material and the scans and the pictures and everything. So 2020, I kind of spent compiling it all together, getting all the stuff together, writing all the extra material, and then, of course, reaching out to everybody and getting permission to use it all. Because, you can't just go away and use other people's artwork and this, that, and the other. So I had to sort of find people, reach out to everybody, get permission. Everybody was gracious enough to say, yeah, that's fine. And obviously the result is the book that came out towards the end of last year. Steve did all the layout on it, and I think he did an extraordinarily good job on it. I think it looks beautiful. I think it's reproduced very well. The print, there it is. The print has done a great job on it. Yes. And I'm very proud of it. I think it's a great looking book, and it's the sort of thing, that I wanted to see, that I wanted to have out there. And it's really nice that, it seems to be well received now, and people are obviously getting the copies and are enjoying it. But yeah, it's an awful lot of work, as you can imagine.
Oh, gosh, yes.
There's so much material goes into doing a book like this. It's not just a question of sitting down and writing it. You've got to do all the research, all the background, write all the bits and bobs and all the stuff, find all the material, scan it all in, get all the captions together. Everything needs to be, researched and put in place. And even towards the end of last year, when Steve was laying it out in sort of, I think it was July, August time, we were still coming up with more bits that we could add in. Oh, we mustn't forget that. Oh, let's put that in. Yes, let's put. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, let's put that bit in. And extra bits and bobs were coming in, and all sorts of stuff. Plus, I'd see stuff online, and it would suddenly remind me. I mean, there was a box out I included on 2 CDs that were done.
Yes.
That were based on the New Adventures, and that I suddenly remembered because I read something about Adrian Pack and Mike Phillis, I think, who were the musicians on it, online, and it triggered the memory that, oh yes, they did something. Yes, we need to include that. So yeah, we tried to include as much as we could in there, all about the New Adventures and the spin-offs. I mean, even down to tracking down Richard, and I can never say his second name, Predalavallarak in Australia, who did the Broadsword magazine. Was all based on the New Adventures. It was great. It was great. I was very, very pleased with it. Very pleased with it.
Oh gosh, yes.
Very, very similar to the Target book, as you say.
Yes.
In kind of origin and the basis of it.
Okay, it sounds like you went down several rabbit holes that reaped a lot of fruit. So that's I personally I spent 5 years working for a publishing house, and of course I was part of it was a larger publishing house. So we had editors, we had graphic designers, we had production people, we had marketing people, we had all that, customer service and all that. And that's basically you and one other person, it sounds like, that did all of that work and doing
Absolutely.
all the. And then that's what makes it. And so for everybody out there, that's, writing, you think writing a book, no problem. No, when you get this book and you read through it, it is so well laid out. I mean, it is just so easy. It flows well. And I wanted to point out just one minor thing. One of the things that differs from the Target book that I absolutely loved was the blue ribbon that was included in the in that. And then I thought, and of course I worked for a religious publisher, so we made a lot of books that had ribbons put in, and I know that adds a little cost to the production. But what was the idea? I mean, I know it's a minor thing, but what was the idea to put the ribbon in there?
I just felt it needed it. I mean, Telos has done hardback books in the past, and we stopped doing them to some extent because they.
It's really nice. Yeah, I just
getting sales for them and stuff.
I used it as a bookmark when I was reading the book, and I thought this is really.
That's the idea, you see.
Yeah, that was.
I love those little elements that sort of really go to make up the book. I mean, you mentioned the bookmark. I mean, did you notice that the Heather and Howe band's in there as well? I mean, if you're in book, you'll understand that, Larry.
Yes.
So it's got little bits of cloth just at the top of the spine. I've got my own copy here.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's you can kind of see it there. Yeah, it's.
I went for blue and white for that because I thought that would match nicely.
Yeah, it's just there's so many details.
Deciding on the end papers, which are these things at the beginning and the end, and getting the printing of that right. And the colour of the ink on those, Larry, is the same colour as the TARDIS.
Yes.
It's the Pantone colour of the TARDIS is what we used for the Heather and Howe frontispieces and stuff. And it's like all of those little things go to make the book a bit more special, and I like that. So we did that with the New Who Adventures, and we also did it with the other 2 hardback books we had coming out. We did a couple of art books as well at the same time, not Doctor Who related, and they had ribbons and stuff in as well. And I like that, and I think as long as we can afford to do it, then we'll continue to add those little touches to the books because it just all makes it nice and interesting. Plus, I'm sure you noticed the spot laminate on the cover as well.
Yes.
So the cover's matte laminate, but the logo and the wording is kind of got the spot laminate over it, which makes it a bit more interesting.
Yeah, that was the first thing. The first thing I noticed when I unboxed these, and I thought, wow, what an amazing layout and design. Of course, I was going to ask about the cover as well because it is probably one of my favorite books. Is the Also People, and it's a really, and I thought that cover just that, and I was going to ask what if you was this did you have a series of artwork that you were looking at and you had to whittle it down? So what was the process in picking the cover up?
When I was deciding on the cover for it, I kind of always thought I wanted to use one of the actual covers from the New Adventures. I wanted to use one. And then there was the question of obviously which one.
Mhm.
So I didn't want to use anything that was too specific. I didn't want anything that was a specific cover for a specific book. So, i.e., I didn't want a Sontaran on it, or I didn't want a zombie on it, or I wanted something that was generic enough to say the new adventures, but to be something from the books. So my two choices that I was going to go with was the Also People. The other one was the Dimension. No, the one of the Doctor playing chess with the skeletons, whichever one that one was.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not sure I have that. I don't have all the books. I have most.
That was by Jeff Cummins. And I always loved that artwork.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
And in the end, we decided to go with Sylvester McCoy whimsically drinking tea in a armchair floating in space while a battle rages around him, because it kind of summed up everything that the New Adventures was all.
I'm gonna put that up for the camera so that people can see the original book, and of course it is
kind of just summed it all up. And as it happened, I've actually got that original piece of artwork as well.
Oh, nice.
So I knew it was available because I had it, and Tony Mazzero was the artist, and again he graciously gave permission for us to use it on the cover. So it just seemed everything just seemed to fall into the right way of working. I mean, funnily enough, the biggest challenge with the cover is because the book is a different dimension to the paperback. The paperbacks are a lot longer and thinner, whereas the book's a bit wider and fatter. So I had to also consider take that into account, and to make sure that the artwork was going to fit on the actual space of the cover, leaving us room for the title and author block and that sort of stuff as well.
Right.
So, when you do books, nothing happens by accident.
Right.
Every single little element is thought through and positioned, and this needs to go there, and what's that? The color of it was chosen. I think it echoes the cover of the actual Also People, because I quite like the orange, and I thought
it is. It matches perfectly. Yeah, it's really
nice.
Andrew
Mark Thompson actually did the logo for me and the overall design, because I was struggling a little bit on my own to try and do it, and so he came up with the Who Adventures bit, and we had various options that we were playing with for the logo that we went through, and the font changed a couple of times, just trying to get it all to actually say the New Adventures, to look the New Adventures while being slightly different and being a different sort of physical dimension as well. So there's an awful lot of thought went into it. In terms of the way you do it and the way you set it all out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just 5 minutes before we started our interview this morning, I went on to social media and just scrolled through, and I counted 31 posts about your book and over 40 posts of new adventure books, either being discussed, showcased, or otherwise just included. And and at least 10 where your book and new adventure books were all in a collage.
There's a resurgence. You see, there's a resurgence. That's good to hear.
It's really, I think, and of course, just a few days ago, I was over at Alien Entertainment. I was talking. Gene happened to be in the store on a weekday, which was kind of blew me away. I had picked up a few additional books, and I said, so do you think this is going, this book is going to be a resurgical interest in these books? And he said, absolutely, because he told me the story about how when they kind of went out of style in the late 90s, he went and actually bought an entire semi-trailer load full of adventure books, which Gene, so that's he goes big, or he bought the entire thing. So right now, and I'll include my listeners too. So if you'd like to get a copy of any of the new adventure books, not all the titles, but most of them, DoctorWhoStore.com is currently running a 15% off sale on all the new adventure books. Some of those books as low as $5 a copy. So you can, and that's, by the way, he told me that sale will not be forever. It'll last for a few weeks. But and these are all new books. These are not used books. These are all new because they've never been, they were books that were basically returned to the publisher, and the publishers auctioned them off or sold them off just to get rid of them. And that's kind of how, of course, he's got a very large inventory of these books, and probably the most in the country. And that's how Gene works, you know that. So that's been people have been asking me, so where can I get a copy of this and this and this? So the other thing I know this may be a question you can't answer necessarily, but of course the two most desirable books in the collection are the last two, the Lung Barrow and Dying Days. So why do you think, because these books are going for, in American dollars, about $200 to $250 a piece. Was there a low print run? Was it just a distribution, or was it just winding down and they just stopped, putting them out? Do you have any?
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, yes. I think those books had lower print runs. I mean, what happened obviously was that Virgin had been told their license wasn't going to be renewed, and so the last kind of books in the Doctor Who series. And
by the way, just to point that out, the absence of the Doctor Who logo on these books points out to that fact.
Yeah, they took the Doctor Who logo off earlier because they were trying to make them stand alone. And also, they cut the print runs. They knew they didn't want to be left with titles unsold and stuff. So that they had a lower print run. They were hard to find. I've got a feeling as well that somewhere in the middle, it may not have been at the end, but somewhere in the middle, London Bridge, who was the American distributor of the books, had pulled out. They'd lost their American distributor, so the book stopped being distributed. So those last few titles in the Doctor Who range were definitely harder to find because they were lower print runs. They weren't reprinting them anymore. So when they're gone, they're gone. And that was simply what it was. So they're quite hard to find, and therefore people will charge premium for them.
It's very similar to what happened with the W.H. Allen classic hardcovers when we got down to the Smugglers, and you couldn't find a copy of the Smugglers because they didn't print very many of them, and U.S. distribution of those hardcovers ended in 1985. So it was, Lyle Stewart basically said, we're not going to sell them anymore. So that whole thing kind of fizzled out. And then, of course, Lyle Stewart went bust and we couldn't even get Target books in this country anymore.
And I think they were also absolutely sort of chasing their end of license date, Virgin, as well.
Right.
Because of the kind of the problems with the Survivor Sin story, which got delayed and ended up coming out like right at the very end as well.
Oh yeah.
There was a lot of concerns that they might not get to finish and blah blah blah. Some of those later titles are very hard to find and can be quite expensive to pick up.
Yeah, because I know another podcaster had contacted me and said, can I find a reasonably priced copy of Lung Barrow? And I said, no, probably not, because I got these two copies I bought many years ago, and I think they were $25 when I bought them back in the day. But now somebody said, well, you could turn that around for $300. I said, well, I don't want to let it go. That's not why I do this. I actually, this year I realized I've been collecting Doctor Who for 40 years now, because I started in 1981. I know you started much sooner than that, but that's and when I look, I also didn't realize that you were on Antiques Roadshow once.
Well, the Antique Doctor Who show.
The Antique Doctor Who show, right? Yeah.
Well, it was an Antiques Roadshow. That's a different show. But yes, okay. I was on. Right. I was on the Antiques Doctor Who show.
Okay, so somebody needs to correct your Wikipedia page.
Okay.
It says Antiques Roadshow on there. I was like, well, I'll take it with a grain of salt, but that's okay. No, it's no problem. It happens. And of course, it's always nice to talk to a man who has a Wikipedia page. That's really quite, I don't know how you feel about that.
There you go.
And by the way, to my listeners, too, if you want to see the video of this interview, me interacting with David J. Howe and all the visuals that go with this, it will be available on our Patreon page if you're at the $15 or above level, and that's at patreon.com/Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. My next question, Court, is when you were in the midst of your research, was there anything that surprised you or shocked you about the research, that maybe something you believed and it was changed by that research?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. I mean, so a lot of the research was really more around the imagery that was in the book. I knew I wanted to reproduce the covers full page because I covers, and I wanted to reproduce the artwork, or as much as the artwork as I could full page. But I'm also a big fan of, like the development of covers and development of the artwork. So again, from Virgin's files, I had a lot of scans and faxes of early versions of covers that had been sent to them.
Yes.
I knew I wanted to reproduce some of those. I mean, there was some nice stuff as well, like of some of the authors came up with ideas for covers, which was nice to be able to include those in the book, where they'd got ideas and thought, let's do this, that, and the other, or what have you. That there was obviously covers that I think a lot of people know that some of the covers didn't actually happen, like the one for Christmas on a Rational Planet, where they actually got as far as proofing the cover on a book proof, but then they didn't actually use it, stuff like that. And it was nice to be able to just include all of that material in the book. But I don't think there was anything that came up that I was like, oh, I never knew that.
Okay.
There was a couple of, there was a mystery piece of artwork from Rod Ramos, which shows kind of like costume design for Ace and the Doctor, where there was a lot of puzzlement about what exactly was that, where did it come from, how did it come to be. And I talked to Rod, and he couldn't remember. He had no memory of doing it at all. I talked to John Freeman, who was editor of Doctor Who magazine at the time, because it transpired that Rod was working for Doctor Who magazine. But Rod said he'd never worked for Virgin, so he had no knowledge about that. I mean, John Freeman didn't remember it, but he didn't remember ever doing anything for Virgin. Peter Darvel-Evans and Bex Levine couldn't remember because they said, no, we never asked anybody to come. So it was all a bit of a mystery as to what this piece of artwork was that was in Virgin's files. And I mean, in the end, we kind of put 2 and 2 together and maybe made 5. But by putting everyone's stories together, we spoke to Gary Russell as well, who was also kind of editing Doctor magazine at the time. He couldn't remember it. And we kind of came to the conclusion that Rod had been asked to do this for Doctor Who magazine as a sort of visualization for the Doctor Who magazine artists. But they then sent a copy to Virgin because they thought it might be useful for them to see what they were planning to do. And so therefore it kind of got shared between the two companies. So that was all a bit of a mystery. That was quite strange. But yeah, no, there really wasn't anything. I mean,
no, nothing shocking.
I remember that, at the time I was working for Virgin as well. I mean, we were writing books in the 60s, 70s, 80s. So we were in and out the offices all the time while these books were being, written and released and everything. We were at some of the parties where people discussed them all and so on and so on. So, we were well aware of what was going on at the time. So there weren't any real, major surprises about the range or what was happening or what we were going. And again, the book it's not about the fiction. It's about It's about the creation of the range and the development of the range of books. I mean, I noticed one comment online said, "Oh, it's a shame the book didn't go into more how the books had used the Cthulhian, Lovecraftian kind of mythos."
Well,
and I'm like, yeah, but that's not what this book's about. Not
the point. Yeah,
the fiction. It's not about the plots or the stories or what happened twice or what happened to the Doctor or that's not what the focus of this book is. I mean, there's other books which look at the fiction of the but that's not what the point of this one was. So, and if we tried to do that, it would be like 15 times as long.
You need 3 volumes. Yeah.
3 volumes, you just can't do that.
No. And I want to point out too that this is the reason I love this book was it's like a peek into the Virgin world of what went on behind. Like here's the first drawing of what we had, and here's where it actually got to. And that's what I loved about when I worked in publishing is I would see these first drafts of covers and I would see like somebody say, no, I don't like that. Or the author would be like, no, we're not doing that. And they would go back and do it. Of course, I was in music publishing, so different complete thing altogether. But with this, from the get-go, going through, and I was pulled into the book right away, right on the beginning here, where you start off just even going back to the Dalek Outer Space book and
Yes.
TV comic and some of the Target books and some of the those spin-offs and where did we come from?
It's just like setting a scene, isn't it? It's just setting out the stall. I mean, this is where Doctor Who fiction started. This was the first. This is how it kind of developed. We had all the novelizations, and then obviously Virgin started to expand into sort of like the missing stories and stuff like that. And the companion books and original fiction and stuff like that. And it's setting out the stall, as it were, and saying this is where it all began, and then this is what happened. They kind of picked up and ran with it, and this is where it went, and stuff like that. And I mean, I've got my copy here, and I'm very, very pleased with how it all kind of pans out and takes you through the story. With all the people and everything. Yeah, I mean, I was amused as well by another review which says that it's got an overabundance of biographical books out, and my reaction was, what do you mean an overabundance? Do you mean we've done too many biographies, or who would you have suggest we left out?
Yeah, exactly. So, who do you leave out?
So who would you have suggest we left out?
Right.
There's too many of them. Odd comments you get from people.
I found that to be one of the most interesting things. I was reading things about all of the authors, I especially starting with Terrence Dix and people like Mark Gatiss and Lance Parkin and all these people that I've seen the names of all over the years, and going and finding out more information and going through just who these folks were and how they even one of the authors, I can't remember the name, but started writing at the age of 13 and became and was offered a contract and to write this book. And I thought that's the stuff that you need to know. It's really important that this was the range of Doctor Who books that kind of kept Doctor Who alive in the world at a time when the show wasn't on the air.
And people have said to me that that this range of books was their era. Everybody has their own era of Doctor Who. For me, it's the Troughton, because that's what I grew up with. And people have said to me, no, the New Adventures was my era. That's when I into the books. The Seventh Doctor and Ace and Bernice, they were my companions. That was my era, and it's great to read, about the background to it all.
Absolutely. And I like how it kind of goes even to the end of the Seventh Doctor and kind of gets you to the TV movie and a little bit beyond before Big Finish kind of comes in and starts, getting more, they had started, but they kind of took over. And between Virgin and Big Finish kind of resurrected Doctor Who until 2005 when the BBC said, okay, yeah, we'll do it. And
Big Finish started in 1999.
So towards the end of that,
it was after the Doctor Who range.
Because I remember buying, I had my cassette copy of the Sirens of Time. So I told Jason Hay Gallery that.
Again, although we cover the Big Finish audio adaptations of the New Adventures books, what this book doesn't do is it doesn't go into detail about the Bernice adventures and all of that stuff. Span off it all, because again, it's not the focus of the book.
No.
There's other books which look at that material and are very good. The focus of this one, it was those Virgin books.
Yes.
To them. So we cover the new event, the Big Finish adaptations of them. We cover the foreign rights, the translations of them.
Yes.
We cover the CD kind of inspired the things. We try, but it all has to spin from that New Adventures. A book has to have a focus.
Yes.
Got to try and keep to that focus to keep the book under control, because otherwise you end up with something very big and rambling. That doesn't really work. Yeah,
and I'll say this about this book: it is not rambly at all. It is a very well-flowing book. I spent 4 nights reading the entire book, every inset, every article, and I thought it flowed extremely well. And the way it was laid out, it didn't like I said, a book, it didn't distract you. It kind of kept you focused. It's like, I want to get to the next part. This is really interesting. Of course, that's just I know it's just for me, but it also got me back to, okay, let me dig out, because I have these old, I'll hold this up here. It's one of my book boxes here that stacks inside of another that has I've got the Target books and then all these, because I don't have shelf space for all that stuff, as you know, but I thought I got to go back and read some of these, because this is really something else. And of course, Big Finish has some of the audios now out from the New Adventures, and there was even a BBV video of Shakedown that didn't include the Doctor, but it had some of the story.
Well, that's where Shakedown started. Was the
BBV video. Okay, yeah, and that was, of course,
it was BBB. That I think Shakedown was done by.
Oh, right. Was that
Gary Lee of Doctor Who magazine?
Right, Doctor Magazine. It was kind of marketed with those BBV videos. I remember back in the day, because I remember it was always difficult to get that kind of stuff here. But my younger brother had gotten a hold of a multinational VCR that played PAL tapes and all that. I said, well, okay, let me get a bunch of these. So we sat and we watched all of these. Including Shakedown, and I'm like, Mike, these are really good. I'm like, why can't we get these here? And that was kind of, actually, that was my mantra from 1981. Why can't we get this stuff here?
Well, that was another area in the book as well. Was obviously when the BBC put some of the New Adventures books up online. And they commissioned all this fabulous artwork for it as well. We looked at that and we said, oh, I wonder if we can get permission to use all of that lot. So again, we reached out and we got the okay, and we could reproduce all of that artwork as well. Oh,
wonderful.
And then obviously we also got permission to use all of Phil Bevan's fabulous black and white artwork from Doctor Who magazine.
Yes, nice.
The preludes and stuff that Doctor Who magazine used to run for all of the books and the stories. So again, it was like the visual material, the visual element was very important to try and keep that coming and to try and use as much as we could. Just
going to hold up for the just a little preview here. I'm not going to just some of the layouts of the artwork, and here's the Shakedown cover and a few other and there are a lot of insets with the Doctor Who magazine artwork and lots of drawings, lots of, I honestly think if you're a Doctor Who fan and you like the New Adventures, or you've never seen the New Adventures and you want to learn about the process of how those books came to be, not necessarily, like what David said, not about the content necessarily or the specifics or the plot lines, but more about the authors and where the ideas came from and how authors work together, like the whole Cat's Cradle thing and how that came about, and Time Worm and all that wonderful stuff. Just that's what you need to do. But I wanted to just one more thing here about that. It looks to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but were you able to get more material for this book than you would for the Target books? And some of those things went back to the 70s. I'm not sure if material was kept that long.
Yeah, I think there was more information available for this book. This is right. The Target book's only I think about 250 pages. This is 333. It's quite a hefty tome.
176.
176. I was even had that. So this book's twice the length of the Target book.
Oh yeah.
In terms of number of pages. And there was an awful lot of information that we wanted to try and cram in and try and get into the book. And as I say, we were determined not to leave kind of any stone unturned. Even down, if you look at page 50, for example, in the Who Adventures, I was intrigued by Kate Orman's mention of this lady whose name I can't see here, called Natazaki Shange or Shange, who she'd seen a photograph of in a magazine and thought, oh, I'm going to base Kadiatu Lethbridge Stewart on this lady.
Yes, I'll hold it up.
That then led us down the rabbit hole of, can we find that photograph
and get permission to use it? Yeah.
So we managed to find a photo which appeared to be, public domain. And there it is in the book. So it was like all these little rabbit holes and stuff that we were coming up with and finding this information out to try and just complete that picture of of what we were trying to do and the story that we were trying to tell of these books. No, it was great. It was great fun. It was great fun doing it. Obviously, at the same time, reproducing as much information as we could about the books and about the artists and the contributors and all the bits and bobs that go into making them. Yeah.
Well, for my listeners, I believe the first opportunity for you to buy this book in America will be at Gallifrey One, which is coming up real soon. And by the way, I talking with Gene Smith the other day, he's hoping to get a few copies from you at Gallifrey One.
If I have any left,
if there are any left.
I mean, we're certainly going to bring some. We're certainly bringing, if as long as the COVID rules work and so on, we're certainly planning to bring some copies over, and we'll have them for sale in the dealer room at Gallifrey One.
Wonderful.
Yeah, no, if there's any left over, then Gene's welcome to them. That's not a problem. But I've got a sneaky suspicion that we won't bring enough over, and there's no way I could know how mmany I should bring over.
Right. I think it's that's always tough. I mean, I remember just when we talked in 2019, having you had Deimos Rising and all those books that you brought over, and you probably didn't bring enough. I'm sure that was just because you don't know what you're gonna it's you can't gauge the market. You can't.
I don't want to have to take them home again. So I mean,
right,
right. As long as we sell out, I'm happy.
This is by the way, that's how when I had bundles from Britain back in 1985, that's how we helped out the British dealers. Is we would go to them and say, "So what don't you want to take home with you? Can you make us a deal?"
No, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, no. So we'll be at Gallifrey. I believe that Howe has got some copies left still.
They do. Yeah, Howe. And if you could tell our listeners about where they can get it online at your website.
Yeah, if people want to order it direct from Telos, you'll get signed copies. So that's good. And that's at www.telos.co.uk. And we apologise in advance for the shipping costs, but that's completely outside of our. Can't do anything about that.
It's well worth the cost of shipping. And by the way, I want to say this was the best packed I've ever seen, because I've never gotten a package where the bubble wrap was outside the box, and it was. I mean, this box could have fallen off a building and nothing inside the box would have been harmed. It would, yeah, I was just when I picked it up from my package area, I'm like, wow, this is so well packed, and I was very impressed with how that came. So I'm also going to announce here to my listeners, we have a special promotion for our listeners too. I'm going to be giving away one copy of the New Who Adventures signed by Mr. David J. Howe to a lucky listener, and here's what you have to do. Just need to send me an email at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com. Put New Who Adventures giveaway in the subject line and include your full name. On January 31st, we will spin the wheel and one person will get a free copy of this book signed by the author. And it's brand new. It's never been opened. It was one of the copies we ordered for the podcast. And this is, one way to get you to get involved and get a copy. I'll share my quick story too about how I got a copy of the Target book. This was many years ago, and I got a call out of the blue from Gene Smith, and he says, "I've got something for you. Stop by the store. You got to have a copy of this." And I said, oh, "Okay." So I'll come by, and he pulls it out of the back here and shows me the Target book, and of course it is. I'll open it up here to the first page. I believe it is. It is signed
somewhere.
I know it's signed somewhere. There it is right here. So it is signed. And of course, this is long before I ever met you. So I thought this, and of course, I first thing I did is I got home and I read this thing thoroughly, because I've been buying Target books since 1981, and I've got a pretty good collection of the hardcovers as well. But this book intrigued me as well, and I know it's out of print, I believe. Right.
Well, the hardback is, the paperback's still available.
Paperback's available. The hardcover is out of print, and there's even a few copies of the original book with the Target logo across there floating around eBay. But it's a wonderful book if you can get a hold. Did you have any plans to reprint books along the way? Because one of the things that came up, you know about Terraqueous Publications. Those are the unofficial Doctor Who annuals.
Oh, the annuals, yes.
Yeah. And Richard Morcant, who runs that, basically posted a really scathing article about how upset he was that he went onto eBay and saw a copy of one of his annuals selling for £500 or whatever, and said, and he said, I am going to reprint every one of these at the original price because I don't want anybody to spend more than what it is. That whole price gouging element of people buying up 10 copies and then waiting and then going out and these are not even Doctor Who fans necessarily. These are people that say we're going to take advantage of that. So I was wondering if at any point, you might, if economically it made sense to you, would you consider reprinting these books?
Well, when you say these books, I mean, what
I'm talking about, like let's say when the Who Adventures gets done with its run and there's still an interest, would that come to a reprint or possibly a paperback issue?
We would probably do a paperback, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's kind of the idea. Is just as we've got a paperback of the Target book available now.
Yes, yes.
I would expect that when this hardback sells through, we'll do a paperback edition. I mean, if the demand still seems to be there, then we might do another hardback edition. I mean, who knows? I mean, the Target book went through various iterations of paperback and hardback and stuff, and printing technology is increasing all the time.
Yes,
so I think we can now do hardback print on demand titles.
Yes,
which we couldn't do that a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's entirely possible that it might end up as a hardback print on demand title or something. I mean, the only issue with those is that you have to take, at the moment at least, a little bit of a potluck on the quality of the print.
Right.
You have no control over it whatsoever. And generally speaking, the print on demand quality isn't quite as good as a proper litho print. Obviously, at the moment, the Who Adventures is a proper litho printed book. I think it's great quality. I'm very pleased.
Yes.
The print quality is very nice. There's a lot of detail in the imagery and stuff like that. It's great. If we do a print on demand, it'll be okay. But I suspect it won't probably be quite as good as the original hardback. But it's that 6 to 1.5. So what are the options then? Is you have one out there that's perhaps not quite as good quality, or you don't have it available at all.
Right, exactly. And just to let the listeners know that the Doctor Who unofficial annuals are all print on demand. And so I know I've heard maybe 1 out of 100 people that would say, yeah, mine came misprinted, and of course they got a new one back, but now they're like, well, the misprinted copy is now rare. So
it starts to become a bit of a nonsense because each book is individually printed. I mean, like a rare edition means nothing anymore.
No, I'm not even a big fan of the word rare because I think it's overused.
It is very much so,
and it's sometimes wrongly used. And I do this often. In fact, my next segment on the podcast is what I call the most outrageous offer, and I get these sent to me now from various sites like Abe's Books or eBay, and there'll be a copy. A few episodes ago, somebody had a 2011 Doctor Who calendar for $1 million.
Yeah,
and I wrote to them and I said, do you mean that? And of course the listing disappeared. But it's like, are you kidding me? Or there are copies of the New Adventures, like a readily available one that you can get from Doctor Who store at $5 that they're selling for $812. And I said, well, I try to tell my listeners, don't do that. Do your research, look around.
Larry, that the reason why this happens is because generally speaking, these days, computers are running these stores.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is, I've got a copy of Lungbarrow, that I want $20 for. So I'm going to sell that copy for $20. Yeah. So some geezer over at online store A sees that I've got that available for $20 and thinks I could sell that for $25.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I'm going to put it for sale on my store for $25 because if I sell it, I can buy it from David for 20 and I can sell it for 25. Yeah.
Yep.
Then the computer who is running store B,
mm-hmm.
who looks at the prices of everything online, sees that store A's got it for $25 and says, well, I could list that for $30 Because if I sell it, I can buy it from store A and I can sell it for $5 more. So store B lists it for $30. Then store C comes along and sees that store B has got it for $30 and says, well, I could sell it for $35.
Yes.
If I sell it for 35, I could buy it for 30 and sell it for 35. And that's store C. Yeah. Then store A comes along and says, oh, look, that store C, they got it for $35. I could sell it for 40.
Yep. And
because
the cycle goes on.
40, I could buy it from store C for 30 and then store B goes, oh, they've got it for, I've got to put my price up because they put their price up. Store C puts their price up, store A puts, and B, and C, and A, and B, and C.
And it starts,
And before you know where you are, it's $800.
$800. And
not a single one of those stores has got the copy.
Right. They don't have it at all.
They don't have it at all.
No, it's all virtual. It's all out there.
I'll buy it from somewhere else.
Right. Oh yeah, that is
how those things work. And the only way it stops is when some person comes along and actually intervenes and said, no, don't be stupid. You ain't selling that for $800. That's just daft. But it's because they set these stores up to automatically scan what other stores have got and to list the same books for $5 more for each, in the hope that somebody, and it just, you get in a circle and the price is $1 million then for.
You heard it here on the Doctor Who Collectors podcast. And is there anything anything else you want to add about the new Who Adventures book?
Not really. I mean, we've been very, very pleased with how it's been received. Lots and lots of favourable comments. I'm very, very proud of it. I think in some respects it's actually a lot better, than the Target book. Mm-hmm. I like the layout. I think Steve's done a brilliant job.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I like the depth and the quality of the illustration we've got in it. I think it looks beautiful. It's a proper coffee table book.
Absolutely.
I'm very pleased with how it all came out and how it all came together. No, I'm very, very pleased with it. And I think later this year, 2022, Telos is going to be announcing kind of books for probably later this year and possibly 2023 as well, 60th anniversary. So, we've got some big plans and we've got some good ideas coming along and some very, very nice coffee table type books that we're planning and working on that'll be coming up. So, yeah, I'm very, very, very proud of it and very pleased with it. And I'm very glad that everybody who's getting it seems to be so happy, because that's, why we do these things is share the joy and share the love. So, yeah, it's all good.
Oh, absolutely. And that basically covers my next question about the next project. So everybody just stay tuned to Telos Publishing.
Stay tuned to Telos. They've got
everything.
We've got some books lined up to announce. I did a little teaser a few weeks back. I mean, one of the books we've got coming up in the early part of the year is the John Nathan Turner Production Diaries.
Oh, that'll be good.
1979 to 1990.
Yeah, that's
so covering the whole of JNT's era, and it's basically details of from John's private paperwork that Richard Molesworth, who wrote it, had access to, of all the meetings he had, who he met, where he went, who he met with, what he was talking to them about on a day-to-day basis, right the way through his era.
Oh, that's exciting!
Providing an amazing insight into just what a producer has to do, the different things they get involved with, the letters, the asks they get made of them, and all of this kind of stuff. It's a fascinating book.
Wow.
So that's one we've got coming out, which is going to be. It's really, really pleased with that.
I'll tell you my quick John Nathan Turner story. Back in 1985 at the TARDIS 22 convention in Chicago, which is the first convention Bundles from Britain did as a dealer. My actor friend Bill decided that year he was going to go as the first Doctor. So he had let his silver hair grow out a little bit more, so it was more authentic, and then put on the costume and was walking around with the cane and the cloak. And at one point in the dealer's room, John Nathan Turner got his attention, walked up to him and said, "That is the most amazing first Doctor." And Bill kind of let out, "Well, I'm an actor." And you're an actor? He says, "Yeah, here's my Actors Guild card." He goes, "Can I get your name? because Richard Herndahl had just passed away, and I thought, are you kidding? Of course, nothing ever came of it. But I remember John Nathan Turner writing down his name and details and putting it in his pocket and said, I might be in touch.
That's funny.
And of course, that's the same convention where he auctioned off the Hawaiian shirt off his back for the charity auction. And it was a lot of fun. I wasn't sure if you ever got to those conventions. You probably wouldn't travel back then.
I didn't know. I wasn't involved back then.
That was that 85 convention. I had so many close encounters. I was drinking coffee in the lobby, and this person walked next to me, and I turned and looked, and it was Patrick Troughton. And so I shook his hand, and we had a great conversation for about 5 minutes. And I thought, wow, that was an incredible thing. Or John Pertwee walking up to us in the dealer's room and just looking like, look at all this stuff. And it was just one of those, out of body experiences, I want to say, for Doctor Who, because that was, I met Elizabeth Sladen for the first time, or Ian Marder and Richard Franklin. We had a cast of thousands at that convention. And sadly, of course, Spirit of Light, completely tanked a year later, and there was no TARDIS 23. And that's exactly when Gene Smith started taking on those contacts. And then, of course, Visions 90 became the next thing after those conventions kind of died out. So that's where we were back then, kind of in that early time of keeping it alive here in this city. So,
good stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody, my guest was David J. Howe, and you can see David and, of course, his wife Samantha at Gallifrey 1 coming up soon. And I'm really hopeful we'll see you back at Chicago TARDIS when things get better.
Well, hopefully, yes. It was. I mean, I think we were invited out to Long Island, I think, last year, but COVID meant we just couldn't make it.
Right.
Yeah, no. Hopefully we'll be back. When the world starts to return to some sort of semblance of normality with travel and so on and so on. Oh
gosh. And of course, we're thankful for the technology that brings 3,000 miles to have us both in one room. And I really thank you so much, David, for being here today.
You're welcome, Harry. You're very welcome. Good to talk to you.
You too. Stay tuned, of course, for the most outrageous offer.
Are you ready to travel through time with us? Then check out Traveling the Vortex, a Doctor Who podcast. For nearly 7 years and more than 500 episodes, we've traveled from one end of the vortex to the other, making different stops with different doctors, reviewing everything from TV stories to audio plays, from books to comics, and more. Sean, Keith, and Glenn take you on a journey through 50-plus years of Doctor Who episodes and spin-off materials. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, so be sure to check us out. And now, we're a proud member of Direction Point, a Doctor Who podcast network. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Hi, I'm Juliet.
And I'm Nathan.
Experience Doctor Who from the very beginning through a classic fan's eyes.
And through the eyes of a new Who fan.
Reminisce and relive those classic moments with Nathan as he offers fun insight.
Or experience them for the first time with Juliet as she dwells on social issues, history, fashion, and the size of a flashlight.
We're the Time Streams Podcast.
Find us on Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
All my travelings throughout the universe, I have battled against evil, against power-mad conspirators. I should have stayed here. The oldest civilization. Decadent, degenerate, and rotten to the core. Power-mad conspirators, Daleks, Sontarans, Cybermen. They're still in the nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really corrupt.
And now it's time for the most outrageous offer. The most outrageous offers are sent to us via email or through Facebook Messenger. If you find one that basically you find a Doctor Who item that looks a little crazy and out of the range of the normal prices, send us the link and we'll do a little research here. Of course, as you heard in our main story, we know exactly why some of these prices are really high, and in many cases you'll find different Doctor Who items, especially on Abe Books or eBay, priced at the exact same price because of these robotic sellers. So it was a very interesting and eye-opening experience that puts the most outrageous offer in a new light as of this episode. But I found one that doesn't appear, it looks like it might be a bot, but there's also a better, you can find cheaper copies of these books. So in keeping with today's theme, of course, we have sent to us here out of the pile a new Doctor Who adventure. It's Cat's Cradle Warhead by Andrew Cartmel. It's one of the new adventure books. It was published back in the 90s. So basically, we have a seller here. The Piotr store in Suffolk of the United Kingdom is asking, for starters, they want a shipping cost of $60.68 and a total and a price of $804.33, which seems odd. And now we know why these prices are odd, because they are set at a certain algorithm. And of course, what they're hoping that you don't know is that you can get this book for as low as $34 in pretty good condition. It is a fairly, they're fairly sought after now. The new Who Adventures book that we just talked about earlier has prompted these books to come back out and for sale, and they're not all extremely rare. A lot of these had very high print runs and are pretty close to being available. So you can get this book. I've done several searches, including Amazon, eBay, and other sources, and I can find it as low as $34 through $36. You might find it on Alien Entertainment, DoctorWhoStore.com for a little less. I did not check there, but you can certainly do your own research. So avoid paying the high prices. Pay the lower price, because in many cases, this bookseller probably doesn't even have this book in stock. They are counting on you paying their price, and then they're going to buy it from the other guy for $35 and mark it up about 1,000,000%. So don't play that game. Do your own research. Do your own searches. If you need assistance, if you're looking for some guidance, shoot me an email. That's DoctorWhoCollectorsPodcast@gmail.com, and put in the subject heading, help with research. And I will do my best to give you some time. I do answer all emails, so I will see what I can do for you. I can't guarantee results. I can't promise that something will be out there. It may not be. We are a little bit ahead of the game in doing our research for future episodes. There were some, we were recording a episode for our classic hardcovers where I said on the podcast I had never seen one, and a day later it popped up for sale. Nothing to do with us. It hadn't been released yet. As of this recording, it's not out yet. But that just tells me that things can change on a day-to-day basis. So just be sure not to spend more than you're willing to spend. And that's really important. Just, shop around. Some dealers might not like that, that you don't want to pay their price, but you're the consumer. You're the one with the money. Do the best you can with that. And with that, that wraps up this edition of the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. My very special thanks to our guest today, David J. Howe, who is an author and Doctor Who collector of great regard and considered to have the largest Doctor Who collection in the world. And don't forget, our next episode will be another part in our continuing coverage of the Doctor Who classic hardcovers. This time we venture into 1977. And that's a tough year to collect. So tune in. Of course, our guest will be Tony Witt. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate all the listeners and all the support that we've received on our podcast as we enter our 4th year in publication, or production, I should say. Anyhow, as we say, keep collecting.
Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.